Reckless comparisons of the border crisis, concentration camps, and the Holocaust are unfortunate and dangerous. Hello, this is Robert Romano, Vice President of Public Policy with Americans for Limited Government, dailytorch.com. Hit that subscribe button. Today, unfortunately, we're going to be talking about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's comparison of U.S. Border Patrol and the detention facilities for those who are apprehended on the southern border, entering the country illegally, to concentration camps and the Holocaust. This is an outrageous comparison that, frankly, I'm dumbfounded I even have to write a piece about this or video, but apparently a lot of people are not aware of the history of the Holocaust and in the Second World War perpetrated by Nazi Germany, where 6 million Jews were murdered, another 13 million Poles, Russians, Ukrainians, and other Slavs were also murdered in the concentration camp system. And this is, and the Einsatzgruppen and the mobile killing squads, the sheer magnitude of the evil and the murder of the Holocaust without precedent in human history, and it never will happen again. It must not happen again. But a part of that is we have to understand what happened, and there is no comparison for what the Border Patrol does. They risk their lives to combating human trafficking and drug smuggling, and that sort of thing. And the people who are apprehended on the southern border, they're not being murdered. There is no mass murder. There are no concentration camps. But that's what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is saying on June 18th. She tweeted a piece out that was about this. It was an expert from Esquire magazine. Expert on concentration camps said that's exactly what the U.S. is running at the border. And so Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, she tweets, "This administration has established concentration camps on the southern border of the United States for immigrants where they are being brutalized with dehumanizing conditions and dying. This is not hyperbole. This is the conclusion of expert analysis." And so the expert in the piece is Andrea Pitzer, who stated, quote, "We have what I would call a concentration camp system. And the definition of that in my book is mass detention civilians without trial," which I don't know if I agree with that definition of concentration camps. In the Holocaust, there were millions of people were murdered. Like I mentioned, there's 6 million Jews, around 7 million Soviet civilians. That includes 1.3 million Soviet Jewish civilians, another 3 million Soviet prisoners of war, 1.8 million non-Jewish Polish citizens, Serbs, Gypsies, people with disabilities, Jehovah's Witnesses, and homosexuals. The magnitude of the death that occurred here, again, is without precedent. It is truly evil time in history, and it happened at 42,000 camps, according to the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum. And so you're talking about so many people being extinguished and murdered in camps, and that's not at all what's happening on the southern border. Maybe AOC thinks that the murders were simply occurred at the death camps, and surely many did. But there were other. It wasn't just the gas chambers, the Einsatzgruppen. They were mobile killing squads going through the countryside and in the war, and just mowing people down with machine guns and filling mass graves with them. And so you had 2 million people died that way. They didn't make it to the concentration camps. They didn't make it to the death camps. They were killed by these mobile killing squads. So other comparisons that are being made are just absolutely beyond the pale. Jacobin magazine, they write, "The Border Patrol is the American SS." And I just can't believe it's just an unbelievable statement. But this, socialist magazine in here that tries to make a comparison. Border Patrol is the SS. They're not the SS. The SS killed 2 million people with machine guns and filled up mass graves. That's who the SS was. That's not what the Border Patrol is doing. And other idiotic ravings. Here's screenwriter and director Joss Whedon. He says, quote, "We have a racist, fascist president who is using armed thugs in law enforcement and illegal militias to keep us cowed and hopeless, and he'll take the 2020 election by armed force and blatant treasonous criminality, and that's the U.S. now. We're the country with concentration camps." He puts this out on July 4th. Happy Independence Day, Joss Whedon. And I could post other insane comments about the Holocaust and concentration camps and what's going on, the crisis at the southern border. But I think you get the idea. Writing in the Jerusalem Post, the Rabbi Shmuley Botich writes, quote, "AOC's trivialization of Hitler's camps where 1.5 million Jewish children were gassed to death should sicken the heart of every person with a conscience. We don't confront and defeat growing Holocaust denial. We may soon confront a reality where young Americans more quickly associate the term concentration camp with Texas and Arizona than the killing fields of Europe, and come to see Auschwitz as just another place where bad things happened." That I think is where we are right now. To summarize, they believe that the radical left, they believe that detaining illegal immigrants on the southern border who are entering the country illegally is akin to the concentration camps that isolated political prisoners and murdered millions and route to the death camps and through other means. That the Border Patrol apprehending illegal immigrants, heroin smugglers, and human traffickers on the southern border is the same thing as the Einsatzgruppen, not the same. Einsatzgruppen were truly evil. They were mobile killing squads. And that the duly elected president, President Donald Trump, is the same as Adolf Hitler, who ordered the deaths of millions. But there is no comparison. The Esquire piece that Ocasio-Cortez depends on links to an NBC News report that notes that since 2017, 24 people have died in the custody of U.S. Border Patrol. 22 were in 2017 and 2018. So that's how many people have died in custody. They cite one particular case of Roxana Hernandez, a Honduran. She died, but not because of genocide. She had HIV. She had symptoms of pneumonia, dehydration. She was sent to an intensive care unit, and she died on in May of 2018. And she was in intensive care for a week. And it's a tragedy that this happened, but it wasn't because the Border Patrol killed her or anything like that. This was a person who was sick, and you have to go look at the numbers. The amount of people who are being apprehended on the southern border is accelerating. You have 144,000 in May alone, 109,000 in April, 103,000 in March, 76,000 in February. These numbers have been accelerating this year. Usually it's only about 40,000 people are apprehended on the southern border every month. So you're more than double of what the normal numbers are. And so if you add up the amount of people who have been apprehended since the beginning of 2017, 1.4 million people have been apprehended entering the country illegally. Of that number, 24 people died in custody. And so that's a 0.0017% mortality rate. Far more were ordered deported, about 450,000. Compared to the Obama administration, it's about the same. About during that time, during the last 3 years of the Obama administration, 1.56 million were apprehended, 276,000 were deported. And then in the final year of Obama, there was 12 people died while in custody. And so that's about a 0.002%, slightly higher mortality rate for people in custody. But when you're talking about 1.6 million people, there's going to be a mortality rate. It's sad. It's tragic. I mean, in the federal prisons, you have a mortality rate. Um, a total population of 1.56 million are in federal and state prisons, and in say 2014, 3,927 people died. But the causes are generally illness, suicide, drug and alcohol intoxication. There were 83 homicides that occurred at the prison, federal and state. So you have a mortality rate of about 0.25%, and just 83 were homicides, or about 2% of the deaths. So those aren't concentration camps either, and certainly not in comparison to what happened in the Holocaust. There is no comparison. More than 2 million people were murdered by the Einsatzgruppen with these global killing squads. About millions more were killed at the camps and the ghettos, the forced labor camps, the POW camps, and the virtual Jewish library reports about 15 to 20 million people may have died at the various camps and ghettos. And so you basically, if there is a comparison, it's that almost everybody died in the Nazi concentration camps, the ghettos, the death camps. A very high mortality rate, and almost nobody is dying in the custody of the Border Patrol or federal and state prison. That's not who we are. That's not America. We take care of people. That we mentioned Roxana Hernandez. When she got sick, she was sent to a hospital and she was in intensive care for a week before she died, sadly. But she was a time illegal immigrant. She kept coming back to the United States. She had been convicted of theft. And people are making a dangerous journey to cross the southern border to get into the United States. But that's not akin to the Holocaust. Absolutely not. And it's so outrageous to suggest that it is. And the people who are risking their lives on the southern border, they don't deserve that. They don't deserve to be compared to mass murderers, to be compared to the SS, or the most evil things that ever happened in human history. And so it's without question to say that this is beyond the pale. The sick and twisted cruelty of the Second World War, compared to the people who are serving law enforcement. I'm sorry, the AOC, Joss Whedon, Jacobin, and any other idiots out there who are saying that what's happening on the southern border is the Holocaust. It is not, and it's just unbelievably idiotic and stupid to suggest that it is. With millions of followers, I mean, you're telling people that their neighbors are, that law enforcement are akin to mass murderers and Nazis. That's just not true. Not at all. I mean, it's just an unbelievable situation. This, in our day and age, it's absolutely disgraceful. And it's a dangerous comparison. I mean, this is not without effect. We've been seeing an uptick in political violence by extremist radical groups like Antifa. They say they're anti-fascist. They're fighting modern-day fascists and Nazis. They think they're fighting the Einsatzgruppen, but really what they're doing is they're beating up and throwing things at journalists and just confronting demonstrators at at political protests and things like that, and calling them Nazis, saying that's who they're fighting. They're not fighting Nazis. The U.S. military and frankly the Soviet military, they'd fought the Nazis in World War II, and they're the ones who liberated the death camps and the concentration camps. And we found out what the horrors, and the evils, and the crimes against humanity in the Holocaust really were. And so I think this is dangerous. This is going to lead to more political violence against Trump supporters and Republicans more broadly as we enter the 2020 cycle. It's an Antifa. They're organized around this. So this is just the kind of thing. AOC, you're encouraging Antifa to do what they're doing. Joss Whedon, you're encouraging Antifa to do what they're doing. Jacobin, they're doing the same thing. I mean, they're calling the Border Patrol the SS. It's just unbelievable. So I'll leave you with the closing here. such an unwarranted demonization of people, civilians, as akin to being mass murderers, is pure propaganda and scapegoating. U.S. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez should go to the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C. She will very quickly come to realize that the mass murder of the Holocaust was not contained to the death camps in Poland. It was widespread and deliberate, systematic killing, including the concentration camps, the labor camps, the POW camps, and the ghettos. Saying that the same thing is occurring here in America is beyond the pale. It's disgraceful, it's despicable, and we should be outraged. That's the commentary. This is Robert Romano, Vice President of Public Policy with Americans for Limited Government, dailytorch.com. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications. Have a good day.